They say that time heals all wounds, but that's not entirely true, is it? Some wounds, no matter how small, leave a scar. Not a physical one, but a ghost scar. An ache that flares up in the quiet moments. For me, that scar is shaped like the memory of my own voice, raised in a way it never should have been. It's the story of the one time I yelled at my child, and the guilt that still haunts me, years later. My son Daniel was 4 years old. It was a Tuesday morning in April, and the world was in a frantic rush. We were running late for a crucial doctor's appointment, one I had waited months to get. The kind of late where every second feels like a ticking time bomb. I was stressed, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. And Daniel, in his beautiful, unhurried 4-year-old way, was not. He was captivated by a trail of ants on the sidewalk. He insisted his teddy bear, Barnaby, also needed to be buckled into a seatbelt in his car seat, a task requiring the dexterity of a brain surgeon. Every attempt I made to hurry him was met with a dreamy detachment. "But Mommy," he'd say, his eyes wide with wonder, "the ants are carrying a crumb." My patience, already worn thin by a sleepless night and the pressure of the appointment, began to fray. "Daniel, we have to go. Now," I said, my voice tight. It didn't work. He just started telling me a long, winding story about Barnaby's fear of flying. And then it happened. The snap. A version of me I didn't know. A stranger fueled by adrenaline and anxiety took over. My voice came out not as a request, but as a roar. "Daniel, get in the car. Right now, I am done waiting." The sound was ugly. It was sharp and loud, and it echoed in the sudden, shocking silence that followed. The world seemed to stop. The ants froze. Barnaby, I'm sure, was terrified. I looked at my son. His little body had flinched as if struck by the sound. He didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't cry loudly. He just crumpled. His face, which had been full of innocent joy a moment before, collapsed into a mask of fear and confusion. His lower lip trembled, and two huge, silent tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't make a sound. He just picked up Barnaby, climbed into his car seat, and stared out the window, away from me. The silence in the car on the way to the doctor's was the most suffocating sound I have ever known. I had done it. I had used the power of my anger to frighten my own child into submission, and the victory felt like the most profound failure of my life. The guilt was immediate, a physical sickness that churned in my stomach. I wanted to apologize, to take it back, but the words were stuck behind a lump of shame in my throat. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw his small, silent reflection. He was just a little boy, fascinated by ants, and I had become the monster.
That afternoon, long after the appointment was over, I tried to repair the damage. I found Daniel in his room, quietly building a tower of blocks. I sat on the floor beside him and, my voice thick with emotion, I apologized. I told him that Mommy was stressed and rushed and that it was not his fault. I told him I was so sorry for yelling and scaring him. He looked at me with his big, forgiving eyes and said, "It's okay, Mommy." He even gave me a hug. But I didn't feel okay. I felt like a fraud. Because while he had moved on with the beautiful resilience of a child, I was still stuck in that moment on the sidewalk. I had shown him a part of me I had sworn he would never see. And that moment began to haunt me. It wasn't a constant, overwhelming feeling. It was a ghost that would appear, uninvited, at the most unexpected times. A few weeks later, in the grocery store, I saw another mother snap at her toddler. The sound of her sharp voice sent a jolt of recognition and shame through me. I wasn't better than her. I was her. Some nights I would lie awake and the image of Daniel's crumpled face would flash in my mind, as clear as if it were happening all over again. I'd be filled with a fresh wave of regret. What damage had I done? Did that moment plant a seed of fear in him that would grow over time? As he grew older, my guilt found new ways to manifest. Daniel was a thoughtful, sometimes quiet child. And in my darkest moments, I would wonder, is he quiet because I yelled? Did I teach him to swallow his joy, to hide his excitement so he wouldn't inconvenience me? It was an irrational, toxic thought, but the guilt made it feel true. I became hyper-vigilant about my tone of voice. I overcompensated, showering him with praise and affection, partly out of love, but also partly as a penance for my past sin. I felt like I was constantly trying to pay off a debt that only I remembered. The memory became a secret touchstone for my failures. Anytime I felt I wasn't being a good enough mother, my mind would immediately go back to that Tuesday morning. It was Exhibit A in the case I had built against myself. The people versus the monster mom. And the verdict was always the same: guilty. This one mistake, this single moment of losing control, became the lens through which I viewed my own motherhood. It colored everything. It was a ghost scar that ached every time I felt I fell short of the perfect, patient mother I so desperately wanted to be for him. And I didn't know how to make it go away.
The years went on. Daniel grew from a little boy into a preteen, navigating the choppy waters of middle school. Our relationship was strong, built on a foundation of love and trust. But the ghost of that memory remained, at least for me. The turning point came when Daniel was 12. He was trying to finish a big science project that was due the next day. He was stressed, disorganized, and getting more and more frustrated as the hours ticked by. I was trying to help, but my suggestions were met with grumpy, monosyllabic answers. Finally, he got so frustrated he threw his pencil across the room. "I can't do this," he yelled, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and preteen angst. "It's stupid and I'm going to fail." My first instinct was to get angry myself, to scold him for his attitude. But then I looked at his face. I saw not a defiant preteen, but a scared, overwhelmed kid. The same kid who had once been fascinated by ants. And in a moment of clarity, I did what I wished I had done 8 years earlier. I took a deep breath. I stayed calm. "Okay," I said softly. "It's frustrating. I get it. Let's take a break and figure this out together." Later that night, after the project was finally finished and the volcano model was drying on the kitchen counter, we were talking. He apologized for his outburst. And then, I don't know why, I decided to confess. "You know," I started, my voice a little shaky, "I've always felt so guilty about one time I yelled at you when you were little. We were late for a doctor's appointment." I started to recount the story, the memory still so vivid for me. He listened patiently, a small frown on his face. When I finished, I waited for his reaction, a confirmation of his pain, perhaps. Instead, he just looked at me confused. "The time with the ants?" he asked. "You remember it?" I whispered, my heart sinking. "Yeah, vaguely," he said with a shrug. "But, Mom, that's not what I remember about that day." I stared at him. What do you remember?" He thought for a second. "I remember you sitting on my floor later, and you were crying, and you said you were sorry. I remember you hugged me really tight. That's the part I remember." And with those words, the ghost that had been sitting on my shoulder for 8 years just dissolved. It vanished. The story I had been telling myself, the story of the irreparable damage I had caused, wasn't the story he had been living at all. He didn't remember the roar. He remembered the repair. He didn't remember the monster. He remembered the mother who loved him enough to apologize. I had been carrying a burden that he had set down moments after I had placed it on him. My guilt was a prison I had built for myself, and he had just handed me the key. That night, I didn't just help my son with his project, he helped me with mine. He helped me finally, truly forgive myself. The scar is still there, a reminder of my own imperfection, but it doesn't ache anymore. It's just a part of our story. A story that isn't about a perfect mom, but a real one. Have you ever been haunted by a parenting mistake? What helps you find self-forgiveness? Let's share and support each other in the comments. And if this story resonated, you can watch our story about the lingering guilt hangover by clicking the video on your screen. Because every mother deserves grace, especially from herself.